We have some incredible experts with us today to help analyze and discuss the key aspects of this budget. But first, let's meet our guests. So joining us, we have Vijetha Shastri, Vineeth, and Vinay Dora. How about we start with introduction for each of you?
Sure. Happy to be here, and let me start with my own very crisp intro. Vijetha Shastri here. I currently work with MNC Bank, but I've been part of the startup ecosystem and community for some time. Been as a volunteer at Head Start for 10 years. I've worked with Dexter Capital, which is an investment bank, and before that with NASCOM, and also I was executive director of TIE Bangalore. Happy to talk about what's happening in the ecosystem and obviously about the budget. And obviously, it's a pleasure and honor to be with Vinay, Vineeth, and of course.
Thanks, Vijetha. Thanks a lot. That was a great introduction. Vineeth, we'll move on with you.
Yeah, right now as a faculty with Jain University, I handle entrepreneurship and marketing papers for the students out here. Been an entrepreneur myself and more than 25 years of work ex.
Over to you, Vinay.
Yeah, so I'm a tech entrepreneur. I enjoy building tools and solutions and work with the larger innovation-led startup ecosystem from the TIEs and NASCOMs, and the privilege to work with both Vijetha and Professor Vineeth on initiatives and engagements. Right? Over to you, Manasvi.
So thanks a lot for the introduction. So coming back to the topic, so what are your thoughts on the overall economic goals outlined in the 2024 budget? Starting with you, Vijetha, could we?
Yeah, sure. So I think a few things that really stand out and which are very positive. Number one, the fact that they've created a 1,000 crore fund for the space tech industry. And this is something that will have a multiplier effect. You'll get, apart from the funds that the government is giving, it'll also help investors. So if you see people like Special Invest and Java Capital, etc., they have said that they will also start investing more in existing portfolio companies of theirs which are into space tech, and also new companies that they're identifying. So I think that would be something incredible, and we should also salute the kind of work that Indian Institute of Science, IIT Madras is doing. That's number one. Number two, also the fact that defense procurement, it is about the Atmanirbhar project, and they also want to create more and more jobs. They want to create more and more avenues for manufacturing to be a very strong hub. It is important because we are doing very well on services, but we definitely need to have better and better manufacturing share of the economy. So these two things definitely stand out, and hopefully it will pan out very well for the country, for the economy, and of course for the citizens of India. Thank you.
Thanks, Vijetha. Great insights. Vinay, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, no. So I think I like the fact that they reduced custom duties and some of the top 25 minerals. And I see because of that, when it comes to the footwear, the industry, the seafood industry, the gold, platinum industry, and also in the medical space, the cancer drugs. And Vijetha had mentioned about aerospace, manufacturing, system designs. Also, I didn't want to miss out on the energy sector. There were a lot of minerals critical to the solar and the nuclear energy. So you will have a lot of interesting companies in these spaces coming up, not just from India, but globally who will want to set up base here. So that's very exciting from this budget.
Okay. How about you, Vineeth? Do you have any insights to share for the budget?
In terms of the budget, one, the angel tax has been pulled out, which basically helps the investors come in and you don't have to worry about being taxed, in fact, for the investment part. So I'm hoping that the funding winter that was happening was on basically will get over right now, and the spring will be back in that space. Second is the government's priorities have been made very clear. One is basically they are looking at increasing the productivity in the agricultural part. So a lot of startups who are working in that space especially will get new funding and will get new opportunities to showcase their technology, and newer technology and newer startups will come in that space. Second is basically, Vinay had also mentioned about the nuclear tech space. In fact, government is prioritizing on the what we call it as a small reactor space, which is in the West, it is more, we call it the modular, what we call it as modular reactors which are being built. But in the Indian space, we are looking at the smaller reactors And many companies have already opened up and said that they are going to be in that space or getting into that space, and they are going to make investments in that space. So it's very clear, basically, that seems to be the next, what we call it as the sunrise industry, in fact, for us. Space, Vijetha had mentioned, especially, and there's already, we have more than 100 startups in that space. Now, the nuclear industry is where till now the government, the rules were preventing the startups from getting into that space. Now, with those rules being eased out, we can expect a lot of new entities and new startups coming in that space also.
If I may go first, see, we are a young country, and that's something good, but it can turn bad if the health of the country, health of the citizens is not well. Number two, 100% we should not disagree the fact that, especially in some parts of urban India and the poorer states and even in the rural, there's a lot of support that the citizens still need in the basics. And education is the way forward. It's not just about the IITs or the IIMs, ISBR, BITS, Pilani, etc. But the better quality of education that comes in, then our people will be equipped to take out their best potential to get to crack the jobs and also to come out of the the vicious circle of. And definitely one thing that would matter is these are the investments that are positive. They have multiplier effect. When you're healthy, you can be more productive, you can work. When you're well educated, your horizons open up, and you can. And we have talked about education sector, we talked about edtech, we talked about space tech, defense. Jobs are being created, but you must be in an opportunity and have the ability to crack the jobs and to align yourself with your skill set. So I think these are something very, very positive. Ultimately, it's not just about the GDP or dollars per person, whatever. It's also about the health of the citizen. And we do have challenges with pollution. We do have challenges with waste management. We do have challenges with our rivers being not so clean as it should be. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on that. There's a lot of funds that is being allocated, which hopefully will be utilized really well from the central and state governments to make an impact. So I think that's great. And also, let's be positive, right? The sustainability aspects that is there, the angel tax that has been, toned down and removed. So that will encourage a lot of people to invest in startups, invest in innovation. And of course, we should give a shout out to industry bodies like NASSCOM, like TAI, like IRAC. And of course, people like Vineeth, who have been doing so much for the entrepreneurs. They're supporting youngsters, family offices, and people who want to take up this entrepreneurship. So all this is positive. And definitely the challenges will be about execution. We execute well, we all come together and be a positive change. I think the country will definitely prosper because of
it. So just to add on to the infrastructure part of it, since I come from a background of entrepreneurs and small businesses, right? SMEs, MSMEs. Now, when a lot of these companies want to start their manufacturing units or want to start their businesses, and many of them don't just come from the tier 1 cities, right? They come from various other locations, which means they need to commute, they need to take you to ports, they need to take you to the hinterlands. And because of the fast-paced growth in infrastructure, and along with the government support in terms of offering loans, multiple loans, Mudra loans. In fact, one of the interesting things of the budget is how they evaluate before they offer loans. The government has come up with a new thing where your digital footprint can be used to decide if you are eligible for some of these loans.
The government is already working with the farmers on the ground, trying to wean them away from what we call it as unsustainable production practices, which are like a state like Punjab is into rice production, which is typically should be a southern state forte because of the rain-fed thing. So in Punjab, they tend to draw water from the groundwater and use it to cultivate paddy, which is unsustainable and it's actually caused a lot of damage already over the last couple of decades. Now, the government's initiative to wean these farmers away and get them into cash crops, as well as make it more practical for farmers in certain areas to grow certain crops, goes a long way in creating a more sustainable and more productive method of basically agriculture in India. And it is needed because a large chunk of Indians, you have to feed your people. Nobody else is going to come to basically feed our population. And we cannot keep importing it, and we have to basically find a sustainable way of managing the price rise and the inflation which happens in the off season. Let's say, everybody knows about the price increase that happens in terms of two of the vegetables, tomatoes and basically the onions, and we end up importing them from outside. That's not a sustainable way. So we'll need to figure out things in our own country to basically sustain it. And one more thing is basically getting into more cultivation of, what we would call it as drought and pest resistant varieties of it, millets coming into play. Vijetha was talking about the health part of it. Now, we have to move a large population away from the wheat and rice into the millets, basically, which are more sustainable, a more healthy option available in the, from nature, in fact.
So, Vijetha, how about your thoughts on this particular domain?
So I pick up some of the threads that Vineeth and Vinay also spoke about. Let's talk about agriculture. Karnataka has played a big role in popularizing millets right from the ministerial level. So I think it's healthier, it consumes less water, and it can also, healthier also, very honestly. So these are some things that we should look at. And also, if you see that, we are also dependent a lot on petrol and diesel refined crude that comes from outside of India. But if a lot of blending happens with ethanol, etc., that will also reduce the cost of petrol. We'll be less dependent on imports, and that could also, help bring down the cost. So agriculture is also important for that angle. Yes, we also have a problem in Karnataka and few other southern states that a lot of emphasis on sugarcane, which eats up a lot of groundwater and is not very healthy for the environment as well. So the positive changes that will come out is going to make a big difference. And yes, agrarian economy, we are, unfortunately, I would say that we are still dependent, employment, etc., is totally towards agriculture. They not pay too well. There is a lot of challenges, and that will become a problem. Of course, I would also give a quick shout out to companies like Cropin, Satshore, which are trying to help the farmers. They're bringing in a lot of technology. They're bringing in financial assistance. They're bringing in innovation that is going to help the farmers. But we must remember that we need to wean more and more people away from the risk that is there in agriculture. But as Vineeth very correctly said, we are 1.5 billion people, a lot of mouths to feed. We're going to continue growing for the next maybe 25-30 years. So we need to find ways to feed people, stay healthy with them, and of course make sure that employment also is done. And I think we should also talk about FPOs, right? Food processing. You go up the value chain.
Absolutely, because out of close to 120 million tons of vegetables which are produced,
the wastage that happens, lack of cold chain technology.
Absolutely, a lot of wasted, in fact, because of the lack of cold.
And there's an organization called NABARD. So you have NABARD, which does a lot of work for the farmers and the technology innovation.
But I think there is a scope for a lot of startups to start working in that space, because NABARD itself cannot deliver the whole thing, in fact.
Correct. You're absolutely right. And of course, one of the funding also comes from this for the startups and entrepreneurs who are working in agri space. There's NAB Ventures, which actually tries to see whether they can fund some of these startups and give them soft loans, etc. So I think agriculture is an important piece. And at the same time, how can it marry with technology, with innovation, creativity, better distribution, reduce waste? We keep hearing, right, tomato, onion, potato prices keep shooting up. Bindi was touching 200 rupees per kilo. And then suddenly, a few months later, you'll hear that farmers were throwing out their tomatoes because it's not, you can't even recover the cost of transportation or growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have problems. Let's
So
not
those
run away from
problems
that.
are because we do not have a good cold storage chain and a food processing industry in fact in play. The moment we have that, these price, what we call as peaks and troughs, basically
It should be steady, predictable.
It will level out a bit more, and it will make it more economical for our farmers to grow these crops.
Absolutely.
Because, like you rightly said, in the season time, a lot of our farmers throw away their produce because they do not even get enough remuneration for you to pluck the food.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Very true.
Get it to the
and I would also link to something that Vinay mentioned about clean energy, solar energy, right? So just imagine that using the power of solar energy, which we have an abundance of, if we can actually create these kind of storage units, we can create cheaper transportation. I mean, that's going to grow in it's such an important part that hopefully everyone comes together, and there is a lot of public, private, and government participation. So yes, that's what we would say is important about agriculture.
No, just to add to your point, Vijetha, about the green tech part of it, the government's initiative on the bio CNG is also very important, because the whole concept of the bio CNG that the government is trying to push across is to use the agricultural waste and convert them into bio CNG, which can again be used basically in vehicles and industry and bring down the pollution levels. Because their calorific value is quite decent enough.
Yes.
They can be used in a lot of industries where they can replace coal, in fact, use of coal, and this will bring down the pollution levels.
Correct.
And it will help India basically meet its sustainability goals, which it has committed to and set for itself.
Correct. Because diesel and coal are the two dirtiest fuels, and we have to reduce that if you want to stay healthy. It's all linked.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all linked, in fact. And you were mentioning about the health part of it. Now, while our population, the average age is around 27 years for Indians, but there is a large graying population also, a 200 million plus basically, who's crossed the 60 years and above. Now, that geriatric care is another place where startups can play a very important role. There are very few startups in that space where basically healthcare for the elderly or the senior citizens are there. Because over the next 10 years, 20 years, you're basically looking at a larger population, around 300 to 350 million being in that space, people being in that space. So you have a large customer base, and startups should be looking at that space to deliver, be it
Agreed.
care, medicines, or even monitoring services for this segment of population.
And it's a huge employment factor also. It can create a lot of jobs, a lot of
Because
careers.
the segment requires people. You cannot use technology only to do it. So you need people to monitor it. So like Vijetha rightly said, it's a huge scope to basically generate employment.
Yeah, I guess this is fantastic. We have covered almost each important domain in this. And since we have covered most of the domains like healthcare, agri-tech, sustainability, I can't help but ask about the business part of it. So what advice would you give to the business and individual in the light of this budget? So this is the last segment of this video cast. So each one of you, if you could share your views on this, that'd be cool.
Yeah, sure.
Add a bit to what Vijetha and Vineeth were discussing.
Sure.
So the use cases for businesses, right, which is generated from organization at the top. So for instance, one of the use case we got mostly from Tamil Nadu's, how do they transport perishables and food items, agri items, medicines to the port, and there based on whatever has been shared, right? One is on the cold storage, the other one is on the sustainable transportation, right? The other one is how does it reach the shipping ports and other places, right? And for India especially, or generally in emerging economies, the export market is where many of the businesses make money, right? So with technology, one could ensure that the transportation, the storage capacity, all those things are taken care of in the value chain. And this way, many of the businesses creates employment, and they are able to be more sustainable, right? So that would be my bigger takeaway, the entire value chain of it.
No, I think that makes sense. How about you, Vineeth? Coming to you, what advice do you have for the business side of it?
The opportunities in the Indian market remain, and they are increasing. Day by day, you have gaps basically which you can walk in and fulfill it. And that creates value for not only the industry, but value for the end customers and your stakeholders overall, your shareholders and the other people in the value chain. So it makes sense for startups as well as already organized in business to stay invested in India and increase their investment over time. Be it in any of the segment that we were discussing, be it Vijetha or Vinay were discussing about. All those segments have a huge growth prospect over the coming 5 to 10 years. And with the population and with the per capita income in India increasing and the disposable income in the hands of Indians increasing, the people are going to bound to basically start asking for, demanding more services and products. And it makes good business sense to remain invested in it and start looking at where you would like your business to be in the next 5 to 10 years. Is what I would say.
Sure. Over to you, Vijetha.
Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. So let's look at the industries which are in the news and which are getting funding, etc. Right? Whether it is semiconductor. So in semiconductor, it's not a manufacturing that the startups or entrepreneurs or innovation should focus on, but on design, because that is where there's a lot of opportunity. Then when it comes to EV also, it's not about just manufacturing, because a lot of big players are on it, but all the infrastructure that you can create around it, which is charging stations, etc. Right? I mean, Vinay, you know about Lumosity, which has now been, of course, invested and then later on bought over by ABB. So there's an opportunity over there. Then definitely we must talk about food processing. That's got so much of opportunity. Also, if you see, look at all the homegrown D2C brands that have grown, right? And even as we as Indians are willing to buy, some of these brands because they are from India itself. So again, over there, even if you don't become a 1,000 crore company, you can become, say, a 50 crore or 100 crore company and have good margins and a good life also. You don't have to struggle too much, right? So these are the 4-5 industries that I would say. Definitely when it comes to ChatGPT or blockchain or all the newfangled which are going to grow exponentially, look at where you can be a service provider. Can you do something to bring down the cost of this operation? So sustainability comes in. Can you bring in better and better technologies that will actually solve big problems that India is facing, where it is waste management, rural education, rural healthcare, urban pollution, etc. And there's money to be made because of all the schemes. I think Vinay and Vineeth, we know about Elevate scheme in Karnataka. For the very forward-looking states, for example, I would say the Startup PN scheme is there. Kerala Startup Mission do some great stuff. They're coming up with this huddle in November in Kovalam. That is another fantastic opportunity for collusion of startups, founders, investors. I would say the Global FinTech Festival also that is going to happen in Bombay in September. Thai Global Summit, Vinay, which you are also very actively working with. There's a lot of these kind of opportunities. Why I'm saying that is industries are there, innovation is there, but use the ecosystem very well. All the grants that are there. And like fantastic education institutes like the Jain University where Vineeth has been doing so much of good work. TAI is definitely there, NASCOM is there, and BCIC, which stands for the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. So why I'm saying all this is industries, bring people together and whatever we can do to add value. Opportunity is there, risk is also there. It's a highly competitive world and we should do our very best to grow.
So before when I ask your view, I would just like to know the top 3 domains, Vineeth, you think are going to show significant changes with this budget implementation. Vijetha has already listed his. I just wanted to ask you.
I think the agri-tech space,
Okay.
AI, and healthcare.
Oh, okay. Do you agree with this, Vinay? How about you also? What are your top 3 domains, and then you could also tell us your advice for the business.
Yeah, no, so as I shared the use case, right? One of the things is leveraging technology for scale. And I believe that almost every industry will have to implement latest technology opportunities. And for instance, there is this Web3 blockchain company called Algorand Foundation, right? They want to come up with solutions for the logistics industry. How do you ensure that different cycles of the logistics space, the supply chain space, can leverage some of these technology? So basically, it's use case driven, business driven, not as much as just core technology. So I would say I would be very bullish in terms of scale using technology for many of these industries. And that's my concluding thoughts.